All right, I hate to do this, but I'm going to put a cough drop in my mouth to make sure I don't cough through this entire video. Seasonal allergies. Hey readers, it's anticipated reads day. And April is incredible. Incredible. I can't even with this list of books. I could not keep this to, goodness sakes, I could not keep this to 10. I just couldn't. And I didn't even want to try at some point. There's a couple that I could have left off, but I kind of really want to share them with you, so I didn't. I may have to do a whole separate video on a couple of nonfiction books that I'm, thinking might be good in April, but we'll see. I just don't know. But this list. So the first date of release we're going to talk about is April 1st. This is 2025 if you're watching this in the future. And this is Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. I am a new fan of Abby Jimenez. I have read one of her novels and I have read several of her novellas, and I really like her. And I really want to get to the two that are still on my shelves. This one I suspect will be a Book of the Month Club offering, even if it's not an April pick. I'm sure that they will add it as an add-on because they have added Part of Your World and Yours Truly before. Yours Truly was, I think, the book of the year a couple years ago. And then, of course, the last one that I actually did read, which is, oh my gosh, what is it called? I know this. Like, how am I drawing a blank on this? I know this book is called Just for the Summer. Oh my gosh. All right. So you might be asking me then, is this a Part of Your World series? Because there were 3 books so far in the Part of Your World canon. And the answer to that, I think, is no. I've looked at her list on Goodreads, and they usually would say then Part of Your World 4, and it's not. But I think I heard someone say that there was a character that shows up in this book that has been a part of the other books. So do I want to read Abby Jimenez to zero at some point in my life? I don't know. I'm not certain yet, but I do know that this one is super exciting to me. So this is about Samantha, and Samantha meets a guy who's a veterinarian. I can't think of his name, not necessarily important. He's a great guy. He's good with cats. I think that's maybe why she showed up there, but I'm not sure. Anyway, she meets him and they go out on a date, and oh my gosh, she feels like this could be the one. This could be that one person that she's really going to be connected to for the rest of her life. That's an incredible experience, right? Yes, indeed. If your family isn't in some level of chaos or turmoil. And so she then, after the date, steps back and realizes that this isn't the time for her for a new love interest, which is sad because, she had this great, great date. But there is a quote in the synopsis that I'm going to read to you that I just think is really pretty and kind of sums it up. Samantha begs Xavier to forget her, to remember their night together as a perfect moment, as crushing as that might be. Only no amount of distance or time is nearly enough to forget that something between them. And the only thing better than one single perfect memory is to make a life and even a love worth remembering. Okay, so there is a belief that this is going to end up with a relationship. We'll see. Now, Anita Adriel is an Australian author and has a lot of backlist titles. The Light After the War is one that I had marked to read on my TBR, have not gotten to it, but this book is called American Housewife. I love this cover. If there was a decade that I should have been an adult in, it is the 1950s in my mind. Like, I really should have been parenting children and baking things and doing all kinds of lovely stuff during the 1950s. That era just really gets me. So that's probably why this ended up on my list. And this cover is just, it warms my 1950s era heart. Okay. So this is about radio personality Maggie Lane, who's asked to do a television series, and she's delighted about it. You might be having the vibes around the other book that I am, Lessons in Chemistry, that I'm thinking about. I'm getting my thoughts back today, but I don't know. I don't think so. Nevertheless, she's going to have a baking show on TV, but she doesn't know how to bake. She's never baked anything in her life. Off camera, her marriage is slipping apart a little bit, and somebody that used to be in her life shows up unexpectedly, and there are just all kinds of things that from her past that could show up. And it sounds to me like this is also chaotic, but yeah, I'll take it. I'm in for it. This is going to be considered historical fiction because it's set in the 1950s. I'm ready for this. I think this is just going to be exactly what I need right now. A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett is number 2 in the Shadow of the Leviathan series. I have book number 1 on my shelves called The Tainted Cup. Ask me if I've read The Tainted Cup. No, I have not. I have heard from the person who recommended The Tainted Cup to me as being wonderful that she did not love this one as much as she loved the first. So I'm kind of on the fence about this, except for the fact that I do love these covers. I do love to collect a series if I can. And so I might likely give this a chance. So this one is quite interesting. It's about a man, a crime occurs. A man is abducted from his office, but his office was completely locked down with no ingress or egress, apparently, at this point. And so they've called on Anna and Dinius, I think it's Dinius, to solve this crime. They are coming back from book 1. I think you could probably read these separately. I don't know if you need the backstory between Anna and Dinius, but maybe you do. Dinius is a robot, and he basically does the physical work while Anna does the kind of parsing out what's actually happening. I probably will get this at some point, but I really need to read book 1. It sits and looks at me every day. It's near where I journal, and I see it all the time. And yeah, Swept Away by Beth O'Leary, April 1st as well. I read The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary several years ago. I really loved it. I really want to read more of Beth O'Leary. I hope this one is as good as that one was. This one is about, I don't know if it's set in England because it says they're lost at sea, and so they end up having a one-night stand. Now, they could be lost at sea in a cruise ship. I have no idea, but nevertheless, Zeke and Lexi, they thought it would just be a one-night stand, a one night of fun, and not to see each other anymore. He is not going to come back to town. He's not, this is not his place, and she has nothing to give because she's taking care of her best friend's daughter. So, being in a relationship is not where she wants to be. But apparently they get swept away, right? I'm sure that's the premise. The next one is The River Knows Your Name by Kelly Mastian. Kelly wrote The Girls in the Stilt House, which has been on my TBR for a while. She's also set this historical fiction novel in Mississippi. So that is how and why it got on my list. But here's why else it actually stayed on my list. So 30 years now, Nell has never revealed the information that she discovered from a note that was tucked inside a copy of the book Jane Eyre. And the note really does reveal that her mother is not her mother. So she's kept this a secret and has no memory of their early life where they lived in Mississippi because they ended up living later, I think, in North Carolina, I think. She remembers moving. She remembers like situations where there was a man in a dark coat. She remembers a little girl, I think. I don't remember her name, and nothing else, but it's all very hazy. So this is a dual timeline or dual storyline situation. Nell at 42 in 1971 is going back into the past to find out what happened. And then we have Becca's story from the 1930s, who has an event that happens, and she is moving towards something that happens in 1934, which you can probably guess what that is, that impacts her life. It says it travels from like the wildness of Natchez to nightclubs and other Depression era kinds of situations. And I just think it sounds great, and I can't wait to get my hands on this one. To be honest, I think this is a must get for me, or at least must borrow. All right, still on April 1st, Julia Bartz has The Last Session coming out, and this one is Pretty creepy sounding. It's intense, I think. This was the author of The Writing Retreat, which I really loved. This one said it's a white-knuckled locked room thriller, although I don't think that the whole novel is a locked room. So it's about a therapist, social worker who's got to come to terms with this weird wellness center that's happening in New Mexico. So she has a new client who comes in at the psychiatric unit and she feels like she knows this person. And she starts to work with this client, and then the client is, I think she disappears. I think she's taken out of the hospital. They don't get to continue their therapy. So she decides to try to find her, and somehow she ends up in New Mexico and she meets a charismatic couple who has this like retreat to support people with sexual and romantic issues. And so she ends up pretending, I think, Thea does, to be a person who wants to participate in this and goes through these different experiences that they've set aside. But she can't find this woman. And also now this is starting to create something within her that is uncomfortable and maybe some memories that she had forgotten about. I'm not sure, except to say this one sounds really creepy and difficult, but I would say that Julia Bartz's first novel was also creepy and difficult in some ways, just a different kind of a way. All right, The Family Recipe, Carolyn Hung, editing Lori. I've been here more often lately than I used to be, for sure. It's Hewen, or Hewen, but it is not Hung. Sorry. Grabbed me with this synopsis. This is about a man who created a sandwich, and it's a Vietnamese sandwich, and his company or his restaurant was called Ducks Sandwiches. I think it's Ducks. He's going to retire and he has 5 children with whom he's not had a great relationship with, and 4 of those children are girls. So he's asking the girls, not asking, he's telling the girls in order to get their inheritance, they have to open up a Ducks sandwich shop in 4 different locations: San Jose, Houston, New Orleans, and Philadelphia, I think. The boy, who's not married, doesn't have to open up a shop, but if he gets married before the end of the year, then the inheritance all goes to him. Here, these girls are trying to create new sandwich shops while the boy just has to find somebody to marry and marry them, which seems. The reason, though, that I decided to pick this up is because it's a very interesting premise. It's also set partially in New Orleans, I suspect. And this is one of the things that really got it for me. The Family Recipe is about just rediscovering one's roots, different types of fatherly love, familial legacy, and finding one's place in a divided country where the only commonality among your neighbors is the universal love of sandwiches. You know, I love a family saga, whether it's happy or sad, whether they reunite or don't. I really do enjoy those. So that's the reason why this one got onto my April anticipated reads. I have a feeling I'll get to it. Maybe not as quickly as some of these others, but definitely I want to get it. April 8th, there are a couple that are really exciting as well. The first one is The Maid's Secret by Nita Prose. This is another in the series of Molly the Maid, and I really like this one for a couple of reasons, but I root for Molly the Maid every time. I want Molly the Maid to be happy, and she is currently happy. She's planning her wedding. She's, if you read the, kind of a spoiler alert, but if you read the little mini novella that came out at Christmas, So she's planning a wedding. She's working at the Regency Grand still. And she's also, there's a guy who's coming on for a reality show. And it's that show where people bring in artifacts or things that they have had and their collections from their parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. And then they assess them to see if they're worth any money. And in this particular case, she brings in something from her grandmother, or gran, I think she called her. And it turns out it's worth a ton of money. And she also, in the process, finds a journal from her gran about her life, which is a lot of stuff that she never knew before. So those 2 things are happening and swirling while also an art heist occurs. And so she's got to kind of solve that mystery, but also she's got to process what's happening with her gran and maybe the fact that she might be a millionaire. I don't know. We'll see. All right, the next one is This Is Not a Game by Kate Kelly, Mullen. I picked this one for 2 reasons, well, 3. It's a cozy mystery. It also has a character named Addie, which is my granddaughter's nickname. Her name is Adeline, and it's set on Mackinac Island, which is a place I spent some time at. when I was a kid, and I've always enjoyed things that are set on Mackinac Island. And there are a number of them. You'd be surprised. It's a beautiful place. So this is a locked room thriller. The grandmother, whose name is Mimi, and her granddaughter Addie are on Mackinac Island because they wanted to get away. Addie's fiance broke up with her. They had co-created a game together, and she did most of the work, and he's now reaping the benefits of this. The game is called Murderscape. So she's got some, thoughts about how to solve murders and how these things happen. Mimi gets an invitation from Jane Ireland to come to Mackinac Island for this social event. It's a charity auction. Sounds like a great way to get away from all the things that are stressing Addie out. And so they go. But then Jane is found dead, and Mimi and Addie begin to solve the mystery. And I think there's another death that occurs too. So locked room event. Love those. I do. Gotta give this a try, right? Gotta give this a try. Happy Land by Dolan Perkins Valdez is going to be, I think, incredible. I loved Take My Hand so very much, and this is a Black woman's voice in historical settings that I just can't get enough of. It also bills this as contemporary and fantasy, so I'm not sure how that's going to show up, but I'm ready for it. So Nikki hasn't seen her grandmother in a long, long time, and they have been estranged. Something occurred that put them kind of off. But her grandmother asks her to come visit her in North Carolina, and because this is a surprise and she hasn't spoken to her grandmother in a long time, she decides to go ahead and go. She also knows that there was a weird estrangement between her mother and grandmother, and she's never understood what that was. So when she goes to talk to her mother, Rita, she tells her this fantastical story. Here's the fantasy part. Her great 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 grandmother, Luella, was on this kingdom in this mountain that Nikki is being asked to meet her grandmother on, and that Luella was the queen of this kingdom on this mountain, which is the fantastical part, right? It sounds like a fairy tale. But the more Nikki comes and learns about what's called the Kingdom of Happy Land, she discovers that something occurred that was kind of containing some family secrets and that has some information that would make sense, I guess, to uncover some of the things that have happened in the lives of these women over time. So all the women, I think, and why they ended up in North Carolina on this mountain, and is this legacy that Nikki is being asked to carry on with is the question. It's actually, take this in, inspired by true events. So it's about women, multi-generational women. It's about story. It's about all those things, but it's also about the stories that shape us as humans and the courage that it takes to dream something new, it says. I'm all in. Yep, that sounds great. Again, loved her. Could be a book of the month selection. Molly the Maid could too, because they've both been featured on Book of the Month before. Or as an add-on. You never know. All right, the next one is Murder by Cheesecake, which is book number 1 in the Golden Girls series, written by April Ekstrom Courage, or Courage, I'm not sure. This one is literally about the cast of characters from the series The Golden Girls, which used to be on television, and now the reruns are still there. You might remember this series. It has an iconic tune that starts it off, and it has 4 women who are the focus of this. They all live together, and they used to get into all kinds of shenanigans. In this particular case, though, there's a murder. So Blanche, Dorothy, Sophia, and Rose coming back to life in a book. I will say I received an arc of this from, I can't remember whom. It was unsolicited, and I have started it. I'm about 20% in or so, not far. I will say that I can hear the characters' voices as I'm reading it. No kidding, especially Rose's, because it is heavy on Rose to begin with. I don't know if this will continue or not, but essentially what happens is Rose's niece is getting married, and She wants to first have it in St. Olaf, which Rose, of course, does too, because that's her home place. And you remember, if you watch the series, how much she loves St. Olaf and all the funny things that she says about it. Same in the book. But the niece decides she's going to get married in no, in Florida. Sorry, New York City, no, Florida, where the Golden Girls live, because her fiance's family owns a resort hotel there, and it would just be easier. They want it there, so it's just going to be better. Meanwhile, Rose is doing all this planning for this wedding for her niece because she loves her so much, and she's going to make all these cheesecakes, cheesecakes, cheesecakes. It's like a constant theme. And so they bring the cheesecakes to the venue to begin the wedding. Prior to this, though, Dorothy also starts looking at videos of people that she could potentially date because she hasn't had a good man in her life for a really long time. And so she interviews this one guy and they chat on the phone and everything's fine, but then they end up meeting in real life and it's not so fine. And it's looking like he's not the person that she wants to continue to date or be with. So she has no date for the wedding. But when they all show up the day of the wedding, they go to get the cheesecakes out of the freezer that have been placed there ahead. And guess who's in the freezer? The bad date. How did this happen? What happened to him? There might be another murder in this one too. I'm not sure, but cozy, mystery, Golden Girls, funny, campy. I think I'll enjoy it. So far, it seems pretty good. The Eights by Joanna Miller is a debut novel that currently has a rating of 4.19. So I have some notes on this so I don't forget. Oxford, 1920. 1,000 years of Oxford, never been a woman before. They introduce Beatrice, Dora, Marianne, and Otto, which is a weird name for a woman, uh, into the story. And they tell you about, I'm sure, a little bit about their lives. Dora was never meant to go to university, but somehow she ended up there. Beatrice is politically minded and the daughter of a famous suffragette. So obviously her mom was all on board with this. She sees this as a chance for her to really become what she wants and to make her way through her, her process or her passion in life, if you will. Otto was a nurse during the war, but she wants to become a socialite again. She wants to leave all that behind her and really just lean into her own space. And then Marianne, who is quiet and clever and the daughter of a minister, so she's really trying to fit in, but she also has a secret that she's not telling anyone. I don't know what that is, but I think this is a great cast of characters and it's going to focus mostly on the women probably and not the challenges with being at Oxford as the only women, but we shall see. The last piece of the synopsis of this says, Oxford's dreaming spires cast a dark shadow. In 1920, misogyny is still rife, influenza is still a threat, and the ghosts of the Great War are still very real indeed. And as the group navigates this tumultuous moment in time, their friendship will become more important than ever. Sounds right for me. Historical fiction, friends, breaking barriers, doing new things. Here we go. The next one is The Great Beautiful Big Life. No, The Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This comes out on April 22nd, and this is an anticipated read for me. I've read everything Emily Henry has written so far. I don't always love them. I don't buy them, but I read them, and I almost liked everyone except for this one that you may remember me talking about. But Great Big Beautiful Life is about a woman who chooses these two authors. Alice is the one author and Hayden, I think, is the other one. I hope so. And this woman has brought them together and she wants them to tell her story, her biography, but she's only given them certain points about her life, and so they each have to write a different story, and then at the end of this she will decide which one wins, so to speak. So she gives them a month to begin to compile this story. Alice is feeling very confident in this, and she feels like she's going to win it, and Hayden Anderson, of course, is probably going to steal her heart, right? So also, though, because she's only given them pieces of the story, it's really hard for them to figure out how they're going to do this. So the last sentence in the synopsis is, it's becoming abundantly clear that their story, just like the tale Margaret is spinning, could be a mystery, tragedy, or a love ballad, depending on who's telling it. I'm all in. I'm gonna read it at some point. Yeah. Let me know if you're an Emily Henry fan as well, and if this is on your radar. The last one I really enjoyed. Again, it was the one before it that I didn't, and so I think it's time to see if this can stick. But people love Emily Henry for sure. No doubt. Okay, April 29th, the last two. We're almost done. Staircase in the Woods, Chuck Wendig, who wrote the Book of Accidents, which is on my coffee table and has been for a while. I've had it on my shelves for a while because my daughter sent it to me or brought it to me and said, read this book. It's really good. I haven't not done it, but I need to get to it. Although I do watch Chuck Wendig and what he writes. And this one, in addition to the Book of Accidents, really, like, I really wanted to read this one. So this is about a group of friends who are in the woods. And I think there's 5 of them. This is a theme in this anticipated reads, right? There's 5 friends and they're in the woods and they are always there for each other. They're like those Stephen King friends in that novel of his that was about all the boys. I can't remember the name of now, but you'll tell me, I'm sure, in the comments, or I'll figure it out. They're on a camping trip in the middle of the forest, and a staircase appears suddenly and unexpectedly, and it looks like it just goes nowhere, like they don't understand what's happening and what's there. But one of their friends decides to go ahead and climb the staircase, and it disappears as soon as he does. So 20 years later, the boys reunite to go back to this place in the woods, I think, because the staircase has reappeared and they want to try to figure out what happened to their friend. I can't imagine a better synopsis. Can you? I mean, really, if you like horror, that's a pretty horrific one. Can't wait. Can't wait. All right, the last one is Sarah Penner's new novel, The Amalfi Curse. I read The Lost Apothecary and loved it. This is also the 29th of April. I did not read The London Seance Society. I heard a lot of people had some problems with it. This one is magical realism, historical fiction, mystery, fantasy, also witches. I really love witches. I read a lot of books about witches, so I usually don't mind fantasy when they're witches and they're not a lot of world building, which in Sarah Penner's case is true. It's usually just an easy story from start to finish. So this is about Haven Ambrose, who's an archaeologist, and I think her father was also an archaeologist. I think that's the key here. So she goes to Positano to investigate these shipwrecks that keep happening on the Amalfi Coast. But she also wants to find artifacts. And I think that that's where her father comes in, because I think her late father had lost some things on the Amalfi Coast and she's hoping to resurrect them. But as she begins to try to figure this out, she also finds out all kinds of information about the sorcery and the witches that have been kind of, I guess, in charge of this part of the world and doing some things over there. And so there's also this magical, legendary art of, and I had to write it down, Stragaria. Did I not spell it right? I don't know, but it's the magical ability to harness the ocean, which we've heard a lot of fairy tales about, right? Like there were women that have had the power to control the waves. It says this is bewitching and it shimmers with mystery and romance and magic. I don't know. I just don't know. But I'm bringing it forward because, again, I really liked The Lost Apothecary. It was magical and weird, but I liked it. And then, like I said, the second one kind of went wrong for a lot of people. Let me know if you're planning on reading this, because I would be curious about why, if you are, and about if you've read an arc of it. Do let me know, because I really would like a little bit more information on this. Also, let me know about any of the others that you might have read in this list, but more importantly, let me know which ones you're anticipating the most, whether they're on this list or not. I want you to share that with me, because, I could add to my list very easily if you chose something that I did not. So I would love to see what it is that's really showing up on your anticipated reads list for April. April 2025 is a big one. There's a lot. There were others I had to let go because I just didn't have the capacity to bring them forward to you. This was enough, right? I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I hope you'll share in the comments below which of these kind of really resonate with you. And as always, happy reading. Bye.